And on all these issues, let's speak to Behnam Taleblu, a senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington. Behnam, great to have you back. Let's talk about that standoff with the IAEA. Do you think we're heading towards some sanctions again in Iran, which of course could even bring the matter again to the UN Security Council?
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you again, Kalev. I think this week, members of the international community are indeed meeting in Vienna, considering a draft resolution to potentially censure the government of the Islamic Republic over unanswered questions, insufficient compliance with previous agreements with the IAEA, and much more important tenets of the global non-proliferation regime, like the Comprehensive Safeguards Agreement and additional protocol, things which Iran has been violating much more widely than, of course, the JCPOA. So while much of the world's attention for the past year and a half has been in Vienna looking at the political track with the P5+1 to attempt to resurrect the JCPOA, there has been this much more important technical track, also headquartered out of Vienna, with the IAEA. And based off of where the Iranians and the IAEA were in March, it looks like that technical track could come to a head with that potential resolution of censure, something that Iran is already trying to respond to by trying to deter diplomatic and even potentially economic action. If what is reported already in terms of publicly available draft language of this resolution is to be true, it doesn't look like a clear glide path just yet to the Security Council, though if you ask me, that should be the bare minimum of what should be done against the nuclear program right now. And
how do you think this would impact, if at all, on the clearly stalled attempts to reach that Iran nuclear deal?
You've seen for the past year and a half the Biden administration bend over backwards to try to unenforce sanctions that it had previously inherited, to try to give the regime a pass, to tempt it to come and stay at the negotiating table across two very different Iranian administrations. But still, there is no deal. And the main reason there is no deal is because Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, and supreme leader is a title meant to be taken rather literally, is still riding a high because he doesn't believe that the West has a sufficiently credible plan B against his nuclear program, which is why the regime has been able to enrich and stockpile highly enriched uranium at 60%. This is a threat they made a decade ago, but only felt comfortable acting on just today.
Right. Now, the Supreme Leader may be riding a high in his perception of the international community's resolve, but not clearly in terms of as I mentioned before, these growing unrest that we're seeing in Iran. We've seen demonstrations before. It seems quite concentrated now. Different issues across the country, different sectors. Let's tie that in with the discussion about whether to ease sanctions on Iran or those who say, no, now is the time to even tighten the screws.
Kalev, you and I have been going back and forth on this issue, the domestic street protests that have been growing in scale and scope since late 2017 for several years now. And unfortunately, Washington, but for quite a while, but particularly in the past year and a half, has had an exclusively nuclear-only approach to the threat posed by the Islamic Republic, forgetting the vast chasm that exists between state and society, forgetting the fact that there is nothing particularly Iranian about this Islamist authoritarian regime, which rules quite brutally over a vast majority of the population. And what you've seen from 2017 to present, you've seen various iterations of these street demonstrations go across the whole country, triggered by seemingly non-political events, economic, environmental, social, infrastructural, foreign policy. Every opportunity afforded to the Iranian people, they are coming out onto the street to voice their opposition to the state. The question is, who in Washington is listening, and what can they do about it? Now really is indeed the time for maximum support to the Iranian people and to get that protest policy playbook, which many have been recommending, well underway.
Well, just briefly, give me some concrete examples of what you want to see out of either Washington or other Western capitals in relation to that.
Bare minimum right now, citing the troika of Iranian nuclear violations, continued regional escalation, and brutalizing of their own population, Washington should push away from the JCPOA talks. The Europeans in November even said that Iran's nuclear advances erode the counter-proliferation benefits of the JCPOA. So no money to the Guard Corps, no money to the banks and businesses that would underwrite those who brutalize the Iranian population. Step two is to really target the jurisdictions based on videos coming out of social media. Target the jurisdictions that are cracking down on these protests. Go after the political, judicial, and law enforcement forces through Treasury Department designations of those repressing the Iranian people. And step three is communication support, taking a page from what's going on with Ukraine. A colleague and I have talked about the potential applicability of things like satellite internet through Starlink, something that Elon Musk has been able to provide for Ukrainians who are also embattled at the moment to the Iranian people so they can continue to get their voice out against this regime.
All right, there's some interesting ideas there. Behnam Taleblu from the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much.